welcome to the stage for our next panel, our interviewer, Greg Bakun.
Can anyone? Oh, there we go. Welcome. And that's the panel. So very happy to be here, and I'm very happy. I don't want to waste any more time because I just want to get into the conversation. Everybody, let's welcome Miss Nicola Bryant. I guess you have to hit the button to turn it on. Right down here. It's fun so far, isn't it?
Wow, I think we've peaked. Hi. Thank you for joining us.
So I want to start off with a personal story, which I can already see people's eyes rolling in their heads. And I'm not going to be one of those people like, do you remember me? Because you're not going to, and I understand that. But
is it a test?
It is.
I failed.
You allowed me to interview you in 1990 at Battersea.
Oh my goodness.
I think you were, and I know it's going to sound creepy, like I know too much about her life. I think you were, you would work out in a club there or something.
That's true, I did. There was a gym nearby there.
See, okay. Let me know when it starts
You're
to get
that
really...
stalker we never got.
It's me. It was me. And now we're going to talk. But a friend of mine, she set up the interview, and we were supposed to meet you at Battersea, and you were so cool about it, and you came out, interviewed young Greg with his mullet, and my friend Denise, she was, with my dad's camcorder, she was recording us, and then all of a sudden the footage starts doing a little bit of this, and she claps. You don't remember that, huh? No, but it's and she was fine, but mainly the camera was okay. And I just, where I'm getting to this is
okay. We've only got an hour.
Was talking about this with somebody before. You were off the show by then. You were doing your own thing. You have this great career going, and you gave so much of your time to us. Just nothing else. You just gave us
I wouldn't
time.
do it now.
Yeah. Just imagine the other questions. Every answer of yours, a question is going to be 10 minutes from me. So, and first of all, you haven't been to Minnesota before, have you?
Not that I can remember, which is not a guarantee of anything. Really.
Well, I was thinking about it. I don't know if you've talked with your Who celebrity buddies, and do you all talk about having like any of you do have a map of the world and you put push pins into the places you've been?
I wish I'd done that right at the beginning. That would have been very cool. But I never knew it was going to last this long.
Well, and that's just it too. I mean, when did you think? Because you leave the series midway through Travel with Time Lord. When do you start realizing that this is much more than just an acting job? I mean, it's just incredible.
It's a slow dawn. It's a very slow kind of. Sometimes it would be about just a tiny little job you'd be doing, some little corporate or something, and then when you got there, you realized you'd just been cast by a bunch of Doctor Who fans. So, all of whom are now grown up and doing corporate work or something. And sometimes it's to do with just being, invited to do things like this, and you're going, still? They want to talk to me still? Wow, okay. And then that realization that probably, if I'm lucky enough to live that long, and I walk off stage age 95, and the first thing that someone says to me is, so you were Perry in Doctor Who? Yes. And I'd be going, yes, I was. It's clearly something that, wow, I was listening to, I read a lot of philosophy and psychology and stuff like that. And I was listening to this analogy of the idea that when you look down, if you think about your life as a river and a stream, and you look down and you see the flow of the wake of your presence. So you can see where you've been. That's it. It's just where the boat has left those ripples behind you. And how really we shouldn't be living our life anything to do with what is behind us, but only what is in front. But I think with Doctor Who, that is impossible. No. You're always surrounded by these ripples that were Doctor Who. And mostly that is an incredibly warm, wonderful, unbelievable feeling, because other shows and other people and other groups don't get that. No. And we have this something really special. And it's like if I try to explain to, I mean, people in England obviously know that Doctor Who is a big phenomenon, and it has been a sort of BBC #1 show for a long time, but they don't get this. It's like, well, what are you going to do when you're there? Chat?
Yeah.
Say hello to people? Might have a coffee with them or bump into them in the bar or you know, and they say, you signing autographs? And I go, yeah, but it's the autograph is just like a ticket that says, I met this person. The bit is the chatting while having the autograph. That's the bit. And the photograph says, yeah, we had this chat. Even if the chat's just 1 minute, it's that meeting eyes. That, I see the lady there who's got the lovely thing, you know, seeing something about a person going, I like that, well, I like you too. And this is kind of love fest.
It is.
And if you say that to people back home, they're going, really? Okay. But it's very hard to describe unless you're in the group. If you know what I mean.
And I feel like that one of the things that really sets us apart, is that it is a community. That it, especially at the U.S. conventions, especially Council Room, which I think is one of the best in the country, if not the world, is the what are you laughing for? Is the fact that people can have access to you, you know, and it's in. I hope you feel safe. I
do.
Okay, yes. Good. We got that out of the way then. Yeah. That was actually a mandated question I was supposed to slyly put in.
Where do I sign?
Jason, she feels safe.
Yeah,
okay. So
you're not responsible for what happens now.
Exactly. Can you sign the form too? But I mean, that's just it. Is that connection and you know. I love that about these things, and I love the fact that, and I personally am someone too shy to actually come up to you and say hello, but I know that a lot of people have, and I think that they had a great time with that, and especially if this is, I know this is your first time in Minnesota, that people finally can be able to have a chance to meet you. How does it feel? I mean, I can see it almost as two waves of people who have looked up to you, that you've been an inspiration for them when you're originally on the series, and I have a feeling when the new series started and people started looking back and they are just seeing what you know you brought to the series. I mean, that has to be incredible. I bet you get all the time people talking about thank you for playing Perry and thank you for all sorts of reasons that you played that role.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And the one thing that I never thought of, I thought, well, you know, Doctor Who's popular and people love Doctor Who, et cetera, et cetera. But what I didn't expect is to have, you know, young kids, teenagers, people running up. And as I did at one event, forgive me if I told this story yesterday, but there's a little theatre event that we do, and Peter and I were there a couple of weeks ago, and the year before when I did it, just as we were packing up, a very young man, probably 18 or so, completely out of breath because he just found out that this event existed, ran into the room where we were signing autographs and ran straight up to the table and went, I've just binge watched you. And it was not, I was suddenly like, oh, yes, you can now. It hadn't occurred to me, because, I binge watched Breaking Bad, I did, because I was trying to catch up with the American where you were, and you were way ahead of us. So I wanted to catch up to be able to watch that final thing where they did the chat at the end. And I was like, I have to finish this. And I was like, okay, it's like 5 episodes today. And I loved that show. But the idea that I could be binge watched was just bizarre to me. And this young man who obviously had watched new Doctor Who and had now was working his way through classic Doctor Who, had reached this point, and he was like, there he was, he'd run all this way, he wanted an autograph, he wanted a photograph, and he was like, you're my favorite. And I'm like, this is so weird,
Right.
I mean, it's wonderful, and it's beautiful, and it's fantastic, and I'm sure every one of the classic companions has the same story. But there is this thing now that it's multi-generational.
It really is.
And it was a family show before, so that was multi-generational, but it was simultaneously multi-generational, if you know what I mean.
Well,
and now it's just spread out over time.
It totally is, because like a lot of my contemporaries have kids who have been, making sure that they watch it, and hopefully they see it too. I'm curious.
Some of them are bullied into watching it, and they don't want to, but
Yeah,
we know those families.
I do know a few. So I'm curious, because you've been doing the convention circuit for a while now. You've been all around the world, and correct me if I'm wrong, probably one of the first big conventions you were at were probably like a Visions in Chicago.
Yes. Yeah.
What was that like, to go and go to a convention that there are a few thousand people, plus the guests? It's not just 3 guests here, it's about 20 guests here from all sorts of shows. What was that like?
Oh, completely weird. I mean, the space of time between once I'd left drama school, got the job, and then went to a huge convention was really small. Yeah. I hadn't done anything. And I was like saying to Jonathan, why would anyone want to see me? I haven't done anything that they can see. So it was strange. And there was that kind of 80s modeling thing going on at the time. So John was sort of modeling me, and he was like, well, I want you to have a gimmick. And I was like, oh, why do I need a gimmick thing? So he wanted me to wear headbands everywhere I went. Yeah, did that get tedious? Yes, it did. But it was just this strange thing. I remember the first big Chicago convention I went to, or it could have been the second, it might have been the second. Anyway, there was those huge escalators. It was where they filmed Towering Inferno. So these huge escalators come down into the main lobby, and you're given a bodyguard. Really? But I was quite glad, really. And he was huge, and he was very much into his bodyguard role. And we were coming down the escalators to go to this event, and a guy, I kid you not, fainted at the bottom of the escalator because he saw me. Now, that's the first. The second one is the body's there at the bottom and the escalator is coming down, and we're on the escalator. We can't go back up. We're going to have to come over. And the worst part was that I was thinking, I'm wearing a skirt. And he's facing upwards.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, I'm sure just as I step over this body, he's going to open his eyes. It was just one of those strange and weird moments. And the only thing I could sort of relate to was, as a kid, this sort of the Beatles mania.
Yeah.
Where, all these girls would pass out at concerts because they're just so excited about the Beatles. And I was like, oh, does that make me like a little Beatle? It was like, wow, that level of excitement was just bizarre,
I did a convention years ago in the cities here where John Levine was at, and it was a workers' party, and everyone just kept following him. Finally, he said, "Go home," because we kept following him, and there's a kind of a power to it, and I don't mean it in a nasty way, but there is sort of a Pied Piper sort of mentality when, there is something, I think, very wonderful, unique, surreal to be watching you and Peter for years, and then next thing I know, we're sitting in the same room. We're all in the same room too, and you're probably like, well, I'm a human being,
Yeah.
It's, really,
First and foremost, always, forever.
I do think it's interesting. Now it makes sense. Clearly, my friend Denise, she fainted because of the sight of you, I guess. So I guess that is something that happens in your presence, which is good. I'm curious, what would Nicola Bryant now say to Nicola Bryant just as she went in to be either cast as Perry or got the role, like any advice that you would give her?
Oh, I would not want to talk to myself before the casting because I might mess with getting the job. Because I might do something different now, and obviously whatever I did at least put me in that place, so I would hate to have any communication with myself. But after I've got the job, oh my goodness, I give myself so much advice. Mostly, don't throw anything away.
Oh, yeah.
Take a little piece of the set home every day. Definitely, I tell myself that. Keep 2 in-depth diaries, one you'll publish, one you won't. That thing, if you ever find an old diary of yours and you read it back and you're going, oh, yes, or what? Usually the 2 responses you may have. If you remember something and you're going, oh, I'm glad I'm remembering that moment because I'd forgotten that. I would love to have that experience now, to be able to go back and go, oh, yes, that was important. That night that Colin and, goodness, what was terrible? I can't remember anybody's names now. Wonderful actress. They had a pudding eating competition. I don't even know if there was a winner. I just remember thinking, if you eat all these puddings, are anybody's costumes going to fit tomorrow? But crazy things that I think there must be so many forgotten little things, and it would be lovely to have those. I did find one diary of that year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'm never publishing. And it would just be nice to have that, I think. And I think I would also tell myself to not worry as much, because, my goodness, being young, it's all about worrying, it seems to me when I think about it. Worried about how you look and are you doing everything right and all of that. And just going, gosh, really. The lovely Jason, who runs this convention, said to me yesterday that I'd met him back in 1980-something and at a big Chicago convention. And apparently, I took off with a bunch of fans in a shuttle to go get pizza. I have no memory of this at all. I'm obviously frequently drugged by people. But, and I was like, oh, I hope we had a good time. He said, yeah, we had a great time. And it just really, I think, relaxed him into fandom and that.
Right.
And I'm thinking, oh, how nice. And in a way, now everywhere we go, we have to take a photograph of it and prove it.
True.
Whereas that was just a memory that he had. And I said, was I nice? Was I okay? And he said, yeah, you were lovely. You were just really... I have no memory of this at all.
Right.
It was just going to get pizza, I guess, and it hadn't, but it was an important memory for him. And I think having that in your life to feel like, oh gosh, I treasure every moment that I meet someone across. I can cry. I cry so easily. I'm terrible. I meet someone across the desk because I think how lucky I am to give the energy of love.
Yes.
And that's literally what it is. We're literally exchanging love out there.
And the fact is that you are being your authentic self. So you never, it wasn't like, it's not something you remember like, well, I did my bit for fans. That you're being your authentic self, that you
Yeah,
were,
I have no memory of
that
it
you're
at
just
all.
like that, but it got people to have one of the greatest nights of their lives.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
It's wonderful.
It really is.
And scary that you think, oh gosh, I have so much power. I could have ruined someone's life. I could have said something horrible. But I didn't.
Well, there
I'm
was
not
that too,
person.
I guess.
But then I was actually, I was discussing this with a friend last night, and I was telling the story, and I was saying, isn't it weird that I'm thinking, well, I hope I was nice. And I said, that's a real analysis of myself going, why would I think that I would be anything else?
Right.
I've never had a story back which said, oh, you were awful. And I thought, well, there you go. There's another lesson for me, because there's always these lessons. Why would you be having that thought, Nicola? Don't even need to have that thought. There's always something. And I feel it's just such a community of personal growth.
It is. It is. And
it's not one way. That's what I'm saying, is that the fact that I'm then analyzing myself and going, well, why were you even questioning whether you were nice to Jason? You know, it's important that we always moving forward, always moving to the place of love, more understanding, more kindness, more acceptance.
Well, I can say I've never been nice to Jason,
Okay.
and that's just on principle. But he's been a friend for 3 years. It's that whole situation of going out with fans and stuff. You don't get that with the UK conventions, do you? Because it seems like that's much more of like events, like one-day events, and
definitely.
It's more regimented, your schedule and everything.
Yeah, and I think it's that always, because mostly it's 1 days, occasionally it's 2, but you've always got to get back home.
Yeah.
To your dogs, to your family, to you, whatever. So, and miss the rush hour traffic, and not be there on a Monday, and. So when you've come here, you've got a dedicated amount of time, so there is more freedom in that.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone loves it. I was at the VIP thing on Thursday night, and it was really fun just to see like you and Peter and Ian and everyone just mingling. And it's nice too, because I've been to certain conventions where people will look at the guest stars and just like stare at them and wait for them to say the next best thing, and it's just nice to, everyone's equal and being treated and treating each other well and stuff. I love that. It's really cool.
Just people talking.
Just people talking. I have a lot more questions for Nicola, but I'd like to invite anyone who has any questions to come up to the mic, and I guess we're doing that right now then. I guess I asked.
Cool.
I was curious, was there anyone specifically you based your accent that you used for Perry on?
Oh, yes, I told this story a while ago, actually. I can give you the exact person. I'd love to see her again. Her name is Sarah Sonderica. And I was at school with her, and her parents lived in New York, and her mother was president of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And she was in a boarding school with me in England. And I was at the time also married to my husband, and his family are all from Virginia. But the character of Perry I very much based on my friend Sarah, whose parents were very busy. And so she was in boarding school, which seemed to very much relate to Perry's situation, very busy mother and stepfather, and she's expected to just, get on with stuff. And although she was from New York, she did not have a New York accent. Her mother was one of those people who speaks with the American-British accent. You know what I mean? So she had a poshness to her. She would speak, Nicola, shall we have tea?
That's nice.
So there was that to her, and Sarah was rebelling against that, definitely. But there was a heart to my friend Sarah that was quite pained because of her family kind of situation, and I sort of took that to be very much a part of Perry, and to also take her resilience, that because she felt like that, it actually meant she puts herself out more for other people, because wanting to be a part of another community. She literally came and spent all of her weekends and time off with my family and became like an extra sibling. So, yeah.
Was she aware that the accent was based
No,
on her?
I don't. I saw her once. I was doing a show and it was in Oxford, and she sent me a message to the stage door and said, "Would you like to come and see me and my family?" And she had 4 kids, 4 different husbands, and the one that was with her now seemed really, really nice. One of her children was called Nicola. And she felt like she'd had a rough journey to find her way, but she had just kind of reached an okay point, and it was lovely to see her. And then we were in touch, and then we lost touch again, which is sadness. I'm sure somewhere someone might find someone called Sarah Sonderica, and you can ask her if she went to school in Surrey, and if you do, point her my way. But I don't know if I sat there saying, I can't remember what I said. I just remember wanting to meet all the children and talk with her. I probably told her that because she would have known what I'd done and all of that. But I just can't remember 100% for sure. It was just about making that connection again.
Thank you.
There
That's
you go.
great.
Thank you.
Great question. So when developing the American accent, did you get it pretty quickly, or did you have a period where it started off with like a southern drawl, like a lot of people?
I definitely wasn't going southern.
Well, no, that
was
thing
it,
that your
yeah.
purpose. No one should ever. What I'm getting at is because sometimes it just happens. Like people trying to do American accent, and it gets a little
I think it's
southern.
because it's an easier one, generally speaking,
Yeah.
for people to do. No, it never occurred to me to go that way or do that way. And also because I was used to the sound of an American accent, having this best friend, sort of AKA sibling, as that, I immediately went where I was going.
It's very easy.
And in fact, all of my audition pieces for all the drama schools that I auditioned for all had American pieces in them. So I was doing that way before I was doing Doctor Who, which is probably why in drama school, when the agent saw me, he thought, oh, one genuine and one,
Yeah.
you know.
Wow, that's great. Yes, sir. Yeah, I had problems with Mike too.
Can you hear me? Oh, there we
Yes, thank you.
go. First of all, thanks for talking so much about the sharing of the love and the happiness of meeting people, and because it is just such an amazing thing, and so many of us are so happy that you're here. So thank you for coming to Minnesota.
Thank you.
I'm just really curious about my favorite extras on the Blu-ray releases, the behind the sofas. They're so fun to watch. I'm just so curious though, how from a logistical point do you watch so much Doctor Who sitting there reacting to it? Is it over several days? Do you watch edited down episodes? I'm just so curious about that whole process.
Of course, I'm going to ruin it for you now. It's a bit like when you discover that the TARDIS is a set.
I never. Nope. Nope.
They ask us not to watch the stories beforehand. They give us a synopsis of the story, which lasts about 2 seconds as they explain the story or not, which is usually them saying, this one's rubbish, or this one's good, or this one's totally confusing, so don't worry if you don't understand it. And they give us an edited version, which I personally find deeply difficult, awkward, because you haven't seen the full thing. Mm-hmm. So if you find a scene you're going, I don't understand what was happening in this scene, it's probably because you've missed the other 5 scenes before it. So you can't say, I don't understand what's going on in this scene. So it's weird. You have to just kind of follow along this very edited version. And some work better than others with that. Some you think, okay, that's pretty good. I've got this story and I understand that. But others you're like, okay, I didn't understand any of that. And some you think, right, I think I need to watch this whole one again. But Yeah. So, yeah, it's a full day, but we have to do all of the ones on that disc in one day.
God.
So we start early, and we work through the day, and we watch the edited versions of whatever it is, like 5 stories.
Yeah, that's
something
a lot.
like that. Yeah.
That's a lot. I just want to say I love your enthusiasm for the show. I can just feel it from here.
Yes,
So
you can.
I hope you're having a great weekend.
But that's the thing, you know, when you sit here and you look out, and you just see all these smiley faces, smiley
Right.
eyes, and,
Right.
and that's where you kind of, that's...
Absolutely. Do you ever watch any of them for Behind the Sofa and kind of be like, yeah, I'd love to see the rest of it, of a story? I'll take that as no.
A couple of them, I've come back and I've gone, have we got a copy of this one? Because I was just really curious as to why I didn't follow it. And then a couple I've gone, I did not believe that. I did not believe that for 1 minute. It was like, wow, I can't believe that happened.
Wow.
And it's wonderful to watch the costumes too, with the characters, and go, oh, that's a fabulous costume. Oh, I'm envious of that one. That one's great. And oh, that must have been hard. That must have been difficult. You know.
When you see fans dressed as you, can you recognize the story that it's based off of?
Absolutely. Rachel, isn't it? Is that right? Yes, Rachel. Rachel, wonderful job there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So which story is it from?
that's Twin
All
Dilemma.
right, just wondering. Okay.
And there's such a story behind that costume too, because that is not the costume that they brought out for me to wear.
Oh, yeah?
So prior to that, as you know, I was pretty much in shorts. And so the costume designer had said to me, what would you like to wear? And I said, well, I'd just like to be warmer and just be a little bit more covered. That would be nice. And so she said, would you like boots? And I went, oh, I'd love boots. Great, I can put socks inside the boots. That's great. You know, boots and socks, that's my thing. I love that. So she got me a nice pair of boots, which came up to the knee. They were dyed and they were green, and then I had a long skirt. So where you're now modeling for this whole thing, you realize. So there's the first part of the skirt, and then the second part, there is that little seam, and then the second part went to the floor and had another little kind of frill thing around it. Excuse me. The top was high neck like this and had buttons all the way down one side. So there's buttons on the side, high neck. So in other words, there was no flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just fine with that. But when I came down on the set, so there'd always be a camera check. So on the day of filming, I came down on the set, and you're just standing by the console, and they're just checking the lighting with your new costume. And then there's someone on the floor manager, who relays all the messages from the box where the producer is, and the technical people, etc. So a message came down, Nicola, will you please go and change into your costume? I am in my costume. And then clearly, whatever was said to the floor manager was not something that was very nice. And the next thing I knew, John had come down on the floor, and he was furious with the costume designer. Because he was like, did you not watch the other episodes? Did you not see? And she was like, well, I asked Nicola. And he said, you don't ask her what you know. Right. You have to go and sort this now. So the boots were scrunched down. The skirt was cut off. The top was cut into a V. And the problem is that neither of these things were designed to look like that. So when you take the neck off the shirt, it meant the seam, the dart for the bosom, was below. Because now it's all dropped.
Wow.
So nothing's sitting in the right place. The skirt was designed to be long, so it had weight to it. So when they chopped it off, it just kind of stuck out. And then they gave me a granny necklace, no offense to any grannies, because I could be one myself, but the necklace was identical to one I'd given to my grandmother around my neck to cover the gap that was in the V. And I'd rather have not had a necklace at all. But so the whole thing just became an emotionally uncomfortable costume. Because I was just aware all the time that the seam wasn't in the right place and the skirt was sticking out and it just felt uncomfortable as every other take squished the boots back down. Whereas they were knee-high boots and they were nice when they were knee-high and a bit weird when they were squished down. So every costume has a story.
Well, and I think that's such an amazing thing about acting is that as a viewer I would never ever have thought, oh, that doesn't look right. Plus, I mean, look how I dress. I don't know how people should dress, but you know, but you don't look at him like, oh my God, you know, it's like you got on with it, right?
Exactly. That's all you must do. Always just get on with it. You can't walk around as the character going, I'm really uncomfortable in this, because that would not work. So I had to be really happy as Perry in my gorgeous choice of costume. But Nicola was like, the seam is now in the wrong place. And this is like, it was...
I mean, Perry even does a ta-da with it.
I know.
Mean, so, yeah, absolutely.
Ta-da!
Did you realize the troublesome costume you're wearing today?
I did not.
No, okay, well, there we go. But it looks great on you as well. So,
Thank you.
What's your question?
Well, actually, back to the costume. When I told my best friend I was doing this, her first reaction was, "Oh, good! It's one of the less busty ones. That'll be more comfortable." So she thought this was one of your more comfortable looks.
Yes, and in that sense, it kind of was. But if the costume designer had designed a V-neck shirt, or a fitted shirt, or a short skirt, she would have designed it for that. Whereas this was one that was hacked, and so it never felt right. It was just kind of, one of those weird things.
It's incredible. Did you have any?
So to me, Perry has always been a character who I viewed as compassion being her primary trait. Like telling Chameleon and Jamie, I'm your friend, trying to reassure them even though she's scared. Telling the doctor that she still cares about him even at the end of Twin Dilemma. And then for her to go on in the future to become the warrior queen, and within Big Finish there is even references to how she was not a fighter before. I'm just curious how you view that part of her character arc and how you think she got from point A to point B there.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of work on that myself. I think I had to start from the position of love, because if I have gone off with Yrcanos, which I think personally, as Nicola Bryant, I resisted for quite some time. I definitely believed I had a mind transplant and none of that had happened. So I went for, choice A. But when it became canon that it was choice B, which was to marry, Yrcanos, which is interesting. I obviously thought a mind transplant and death was better than marrying a warlord. But I thought the point is, as I did when I thought about Perry being in the TARDIS, she's made a choice that this life is better for her than home life. So I think home life was not happy life. It wasn't a case of, I can't wait to go back home and tell everyone my stories. You never get that from her. You get, I'm finding a new life somewhere else because I didn't fit in at home. So I see that opportunity to have a place where she was respected and loved, Perry of the Brown, and that she could also do good, have influence, and bring an aspect that wasn't prominent to this warrior species. Be firm, but kind. And is war really the way we want to go with this, darling? Maybe we could talk, darling. And, to teach him the art of conversation, the art of negotiation, the art of communication, rather than the art of war. Because as a warlord, this thing will happen to you called aging. And at some point, maybe fighting isn't the best thing to be doing. So maybe we could learn to do other things first. So I think that is an important role, and I love that she has that role. And I see her as that, the strength of benevolence. But the point that if push comes to shove and it's about protecting someone else or herself or what is right, well, then at that point, you pick up the sword and you do the right thing. But that is to be avoided in very much the same way that the doctor thinks. That is the very last option. It's not the first. By all means, be strong. So I'd encourage my husband to still have his armies and be strong and feel good about that. But we don't have to go in search of war. So.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question and the wonderful costume.
One of the questions I was going to ask you is, you think Perry actually loved your Kanos, but you kind of made it crystal clear.
You have to. I think you have to make it work, because otherwise it's some kind of weird kidnapping, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be a special connection, and so you have to do that scene when they're in the cell together is the beginning of that thing when he doesn't understand what love is.
Yeah.
And she goes, oh, okay, well, I can teach you about love. I may not have had a great deal of it in my life, but I know what it is to me. And that exchange is what starts that.
In a way, wouldn't that be one of the best companion departures of that? It's not anything other than kind of the whole theme of this conversation today, just love and kindness.
Yeah.
And that you're Perry Brown, who was on Earth in a happy life, now she's in the stars, and she's showing what love is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think, that as a journey is beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
That's
Whereas I
incredible.
did quite like the dramatic go bald, get your mind transplant and dead.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that would have been.
That's
yeah.
just the actor speaking, because
Right.
I liked the whole
Right.
acting role. But, as looking at it all now, as we are, it is it's a beautiful ending.
It is.
But then also, if you go to the big Finnish canon, the reason that you end up with is that there are numerous Perrys, because the Time Lords kept screwing up, which is also kind of sad. So there are numerous Perrys, and each one of them is getting to experience one aspect of Perry.
Yeah.
So there is one that is out there being strong and compassionate and doing teaching the warlord. There's another one that's out there that's being a mom and having all the kids. And then there's another one that's out there that's being, the botanist, the scientist, that's doing that. But she didn't get to be the whole one.
Yeah, not all of it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure I start getting some of these questions so
Sorry,
everyone has their. Well, I'm the one that's talking so much, so that's on me. Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you for becoming part of the Star Trek universe too.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that was great fun.
Yeah. Are there particular other roles in Star Trek you'd like to do? Like, would you like to be captain of any particular starship?
Oh, yeah. I mean, why not? Definitely. I would love to be a captain. There's that story that you probably read it everywhere that everyone says I auditioned for Captain Janeway. I wish I didn't. No, but it's a great little myth thing that's out there. They did actually ask me for the role that became Marina Sirtis's role. But the audition that they asked me to attend, I couldn't attend because I'd gone back to England for something. And then when I came back, they said, oh, no, we've cast it now. So there we go. I really should kill those people who dragged me back to England. There's something I'd go back and do. You know that bit that's going to happen later in life where they won't, don't go back, don't leave Los Angeles for 2 weeks because, that's going to ruin that. So, yeah.
And apparently kill them, what you just said, too. So that's even more frightening. Okay.
Casual killing, you know.
But 20 minutes ago, we were talking about was I
Peace
I
and-
nice to everybody at
Yeah,
pizza night?
and
And
now
now you're
I'm
like, I
talking
wanted to
about
kill.
murder. Yeah,
no,
no.
okay.
That's
Oh,
probably because I'm joking. Just to be clear.
This
yes.
roller coaster edition of Interview with Nicola Bryant. Did you have another question?
No.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi.
So the twin dilemma, of course, has a strangling scene,
Yes.
which a lot of people find disturbing, and it's definitely.
I still get letters
definitely
about it.
Yeah, it's. I was wondering, your thoughts on that. Both, right off the bat, first season with the show, and then I'm also curious because you haven't done. Compared to Colin, your run into Big Finish with Peter Davison has been fairly limited, and I'm wondering if part of that is by design. Because it's one, you have another companion that you haven't had within the rest of the show, and so I'm kind of curious, what was communicated as far as is this. As Big Finish likes to do, like to fill in the gaps, where it sort of creates a greater history and a greater understanding between, everything that's going on and the different cultures where Colin Baker, is talking about as the doctor that that Perry's going to have to get used to. Is that part of that was being set up? Basically, your thoughts on that.
Okay. Well, firstly, I love the strangling. I loved it because it was a brave new angle on the Doctor. He was not going to just regenerate and be fine. He was going to suffer. And this was going to be tough. And I thought, ooh, this is interesting.
Sure.
We've got a whole new arc.
Sure.
I think there was a definite mistake that they just showed Twin Dilemma and then we had a huge break in England. That was just like crazy. If you're going to do an arc, you've got to do the arc, not just boom, but I loved the whole idea that in such a short space of time, there's this connection with her and the Fifth Doctor, and he is willing to die to save her, and then she's almost going to die at the hands of the man who just saved her. So the realization that the Doctor is deeply traumatized from this, for Perry, for who she is, the compassionate, understanding person, you have to stay, you have to be there. And I loved the whole strangling thing. I find a lot of people are very disturbed by it, and I do still get a lot of questions about it and stuff, but I'm like, it's not on its own. It's not just the Doctor strangles Perry. It is the Doctor thinks, because he's not well, that Perry is something evil. He's mentally disturbed and he's not himself. So it has to be the big picture of what he's going through. So I'm quite comfortable with the strangling thing. And I liked the fact that was part of their journey. And then, what was the second part of your question?
I was curious about if the run that you had with Peter Davison,
Oh
Caroline
yeah,
Morris,
the Big Finish thing.
was basically
Yeah.
purpose to try to not rehabilitate, but sort of bolster that argument, because I think for a lot of people, and myself included, was like, well, you still barely knew the Doctor. You just kind of got Perry just got thrown into it.
Yeah.
And it was harder to reconcile that Perry would know the Doctor well enough to not run off into a TARDIS corridor, grab the heaviest thing that she could get, and then bash him on the head until he came to his senses.
That just wasn't Perry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it ties into some of the things I already said, like what was her home life like? And I think I mentioned this yesterday in a chat, that I had written a quite a big thing, about Perry and who she was, and I'd looked into thinking about, well, who is her dad? Where is her dad? she doesn't have her dad anymore, and that the dad that she remembers from being very young looked like the Fifth Doctor. So for her, there is that connection. And if you ever meet someone who looks like someone you've lost, you'll know what I mean about that. And without you know, bring back the Fifth Doctor. No, just mend him. So, yeah. And I think in Big Finish, there's very much there was this feeling that because there's only 2 episodes, there's a very short time span in which to play with Perry. You can't bring older Perry in the same way that we have been able to. So, I mean, I'm sure there may be some in the future, especially if you all write and complain. But, you know, I think that the evolution for Perry and the journey definitely happens with the 6th Doctor, because there's just that bigger time span to play with.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
You're
it.
welcome. Thank you.
As we are sort of running out of time, we have an online question that
Oh.
Natasha's going to give us.
Thank you, Tasha.
Dr. John Smith says, "Hi, Nicola.
Hello again, Dr. John Smith, because you were here yesterday.
My
I love
question is, do you have any good stories from making Lust in Space or Dimensions in Time?"
Do I have any good stories from Dimensions in Time? Oh, I can barely, just being cold, wearing my own coat, that was nice. Staying warmer, wearing my own coat.
Was that like a day shoot?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
wasn't
pretty
long
much.
at all,
I
right?
think
Yeah.
so. Yeah. I remember enjoying being on the EastEnders set and doing all of that. That was
Sure.
great fun. I remember that. Oh, you're so sweet. It is getting colder. It is getting colder. How did you know? I was just. Did I? Oh, okay. Right. Hold on a sec. I am cold.
This is the wardrobe change of the roller coaster interview of Nicola Bryant. Mhm. Oh wow, that's
If only we'd had one of these on Doctor Who. That would have been lovely, yes. So it's just I've injured my shoulder lifting my dog, who's been very ill. So, so my memories really just, it was fun being in the EastEnders set. And I just remember everyone commenting on how different I looked. That's kind of what I really remember.
yeah.
Because I'd grown my hair really long because I didn't have to chop it anymore, and I got sort of a bit of a fringe in, and everyone just kept saying, "You look really different." And I just remember everyone saying that.
Yeah, well, it's been a few years since you've been on.
Yeah,
You're allowed to
exactly.
look different, right?
Yeah. And I was thinking, okay. So?
we have 5 minutes left, so go ahead with your question, please.
Hello. I'm curious about the name Perpigillium. How did that name come about? Is it a real name? Are there people in the world actually with this name?
I believe there must be at least one. John found it. Some people afterwards used to say, do we believe him? John found it in a book. So he found the name in an American, I wish I could remember more details of that book, but he found the name Perpigillium Brown in a book. And so he decided that that was going to be the name of the American companion. I did speak to him saying, it's not very American, John. And he was like, but I found it in an American book. Yeah, but it's not very American. But he was like, he was set on it, he loved it. And I thought, oh, it's fine, so long as I get to be called Perry and not Perpigillium all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there must be someone who knew someone or someone who made up the Perpigillium Brown, but Perpigillium was in a book somewhere. And that's where he got it from.
That's funny. Probably.
Yeah. An obscure book that nobody else ever read or bought.
I never heard the name before.
No.
Never, ever. We have just a couple of minutes left. I just wanted to say real fast, getting back to the strangling thing, which I've never been a fan of, but the way you described it, I think is really interesting because it also, to me, it ties into what you said about Yurkanov, is that Perry, that's who Perry is. She doesn't give up on people.
Yeah.
And I think that's really actually helps me with that a little bit because it is just like no one should do that, but the way that you describe it, she really sees it more through sympathetic eyes.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's shocked. He's shocked and sorry himself that he's done that.
Yeah.
And that's a hugely different thing from, someone who kicks the dog, and you're going, you kicked the dog. And you realize that even if because you're reacting to something and they say, I won't do that again, and you know perfectly well that they will. This is not a man who's going to keep strangling me. He knows that something's wrong with himself.
Mm-hmm.
Had he been someone who, made a violent physical gesture towards her and clearly wanted to continue doing that, would have been a very different situation. But clearly this was a troubled Time Lord.
Just a phase, a troubled phase.
Yeah.
Absolutely. While you're in the Twin Cities, they're taking you anywhere? You don't have to say where, but
No,
are you gonna be able to get out?
They don't let me out. I've got a tag on. They track me.
I think whatever year it was that Sophie was here, she got lost in the Natural Nature Preserve across the street.
Yes,
so don't do that.
They've told me that Sophie's not allowed to go walking without me again, because Anton, who's co-chair, and he said, don't go walking over there. And I told him I'd been for a walk over there. And I said, I drank plenty of water before I left. I carried my fully charged phone with an app on it called Map My Walk. So I mapped everywhere I went. And as I was walking back, because I did stay really late, and I liked it twice. I went 2 nights in a row. And I stayed until it was dark. So I got some incredible night shots. And all the sounds. I thought, you were insane, Nicola. The headlines of the newspaper. Doctor Who companion dies in nature reserve. No. Yeah. English actress gets lost forever. But I just love that. I do it with my dogs on heathland that I go walking on. We often set off and it's light, and then their lit up collars come on, and I've got a hat with a light, and we're there with the owls and the foxes and the things, and I love that time of night. So I was there, and Anton was very pleased that I was very practical about it.
That's good. That's
Which
very
I think
good.
is a Perry trait as well.
Absolutely. Nicola, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
You're
Thank you very much.
welcome.
And thank you all.
Thank you.
That's great.